Yo, what's up? Appreciate you spending some time with me. Time is super important. And so thank you for devoting some years to whatever this becomes. I also want to thank you for putting up with any potential technical difficulties that may arise. Anything audio or video related, let me know, either in the chat, which I will attempt to pay attention to, or if you know me personally, you can text me. I have my phone sitting here, and maybe I'll see that. But again, thank you. I just appreciate you guys. This is my first venture into solo live streaming. I'm kind of new to the whole live streaming thing to begin with. I've messed around with trying to stream video games a while back, and it just was riddled with issues, and I kind of lost interest, and yeah, that didn't last long. But my friend John and I have been doing a podcast, excuse me, for I don't know, I'd say the better part of 2 months now, and it's been a blast and a learning experience, and it is also riddled with technical difficulties, but that's the beauty of it. It's just raw, and that's what we wanted. Not the difficulties, but the rawness. And yeah, that started because we're both really invested in making films. Um, but that can be kind of a process, and it can be quite exhausting, even if it's something that you really love. Like the easiest way to break it down is in like three stages. There's your pre-production, which is where you know, gather your ideas, get all the pieces together, um, you know, contact anybody else who you might be interested in having in them in your work. Then you go into stage two, which is the production. That's where, you know, you're all geared up and you hit record, and that's a lot of fun. Just getting people together and making movies, you know. Then you go to stage three, and that's where you edit everything. You kind of put the puzzle together after you've gathered all the pieces and whatnot, and that can be quite a task. It's very rewarding because then you're ready to see the final work and show it to people. Now that's of course a gross oversimplification of the whole process, but you kind of get the idea. There's a lot involved, and we were jonesing to put out new content, and it just we kicked around the idea of making a like a web series. We've mentioned it on the podcast. Um, but it takes a lot, even for just like a 5 minute video. So we just wanted to basically set the camera up and hit record, and that's what we do. And we whenever we get together, we always just kind of shoot the shit and drink beer or other things. And we figured we'd invite people in on that. So it's been really fun, really rewarding for us, and hopefully, anybody who's ever seen it has gotten some entertainment out of it, even if it's just to laugh at us. We welcome anyone to come and pick on us. Like I said, Wednesdays at 5 Pacific time. You can find it right now on John's channel, um, at John Allen Soares. I probably butchered his last name. But you can also find it. We post the collaborations on my channel as well. So if you just search my channel, you can get to his. And even if you don't want to check out the podcast, I highly recommend you check out John's videos. He's an amazing dude. He's a great filmmaker. He's a Catholicism lore master. Uh, just all around amazing guy, and he's got a lot of good content on there. And like I said, I can't recommend it enough. Check out what John has to offer. He's been in the industry for a while, an independent filmmaker for many years, and he's just just top tier stuff. Um, yeah, I'm really glad to be working with him on that. Yeah, he's taught me a lot. But I suppose, my intent with this is to have a semi-regular series, An Idiot and His Thoughts. If I don't get booed off the internet. But I'll spend some time each episode talking about stupidity and many questions that may arise when you watch videos like this. Um, yeah, it's obviously a passion of mine, and it's a very absurd thing, but I also think it's part of the human condition because we've all seen silly things on film. We've all experienced our ridiculous friends, and laughter, especially at one another, I think is a purity that we all relate to. So tonight I want to talk about origins and the whys and the wheres of of how this all came together. I think the best place to start probably be a little bit about where I grew up, where I come from. The best way to describe that is if you combined Leave It to Beaver with like adult cartoons, like South Park, Family Guy, meaning like the only Chinese family in town ran the Chinese restaurant, the only black family in town operated the rec center, and so on. But that's not to say that it was a bad place. I had a great childhood, supportive family, a cadre of amazingly bizarre friends, many of who I still talk to this day, which I'm really surprised about. That's, multiple decades of friendship. What's up, Nate? Glad to have you here, man. That's one of my amazingly good friends. Shoot, I think you and I, Nate, have been friends 30 plus years. That's insane that we've been around for that long. Um, wow. Um, yeah, so I'm glad Nate's here because he's a integral part of this story that I want to share with you all. But grew up in a very Protestant, fire and brimstone home. Yeah, toddlers. Yeah, we met each other in the church that Nathan's dad pastored at. Um, wow, good times. Memories unlocked. We always talk about that. Things that you don't know that you know until you start reminiscing. Um, but yeah, fire and brimstone, Protestant household, um, where your actions had eternal consequence. And I learned at a very young age the importance of conviction. Um, Even if it was more of a dogmatic type thing, it was still an integral part of who I was. And that's not to say it was a bad thing. It was a driving factor in my life, and it's kind of bizarre being raised in that to have a penchant for doing this type of stuff. Um, but I have nothing but fond memories of my childhood, and I graduated high school in 2005, so like late 90s, early 2000s was kind of my era, and it was glorious to say the least, and just a really amazing time, and I miss those days quite a lot. Um, but I think the seed was sown as far as doing this stuff the last day of '99. I was over at my buddy Kyle's house, who's been in our videos, but and by our I mean the group that we created, uh, and we were watching CKY2K, and I felt like I was committing the most heinous sin that you could imagine. Just as the footage scrolled across the screen, I felt myself sinking deeper and deeper into the pits of hell. Um, it was terribly amazing, and I just felt so wrong. But like I said, I think that's when the seed was planted. And then probably late 2002, early 2003, Nathan and I discovered Jackass. And I just everybody knows what Jackass is, but the roots of Jackass, maybe not so much. Jackass is a combination of CKY, so Bam and his crew out in Pennsylvania, and then the Big Brother skateboarding magazine, which was a really gnarly production. I mean, it was, I believe, targeted, well, obviously it's skaters, but I think it was targeted at children too. And they had articles in there like how to commit suicide, how to smoke crack, how to elicit the services of a hooker. I mean, it was really crazy, gnarly stuff that, I mean, you wouldn't even like in a triple X rated magazine nowadays, you wouldn't even imagine some like to see some of these things in there. Um, but Johnny Knoxville was hired on to write articles, and I think he ended up doing the self-defense test as a video article, and the magic sort of happened from there. They got in contact with Bam and his crew, and history was made. Jackass was started, and we couldn't get enough of it. I remember late at night watching TV with the volume on like one. You know, at the time I didn't realize the power of subtitles. Now I can't live without the damn things. But I could barely hear this because I was so afraid of the wrath of my dad. Now that's not to say he would come out and abuse me. I had great parents, like I said, and he was just an amazing dad. And he was a drill sergeant, so if you've never been around that, they can be pretty loud and intimidating, and especially if they're angry at night, uh, watching their son fall off the path. I'm joking, but he. This was when like we had what was called a satellite TV, and it's not like Dish Network. It was this gargantuan apparatus in the backyard, and all the channels weren't available at once. You had to tune in to different satellites. So like you'd put like satellite G7, and then this thing in the backyard would like oscillate till it found this G7 satellite somewhere up there. And then there'd be like, you know, a handful of channels. It's like, oh shit, I want to watch Cartoon Network. Well, I got to go to satellite B12 now. And then, you know, you had this whole just process just to watch channels. And, you know, you did the thing that your parents already knew about. You know, you had the bad stuff on one channel, then you have like cartoons on recall. So just wild times. But I remember risking his wrath watching reruns of the Jackass television show. And those were those were beautiful moments of my life. Um, if I didn't have the fear of God in me, I thought my dad was going to put it in me. But I just couldn't get enough of it, and it felt so equal parts right and wrong at the same time. It was really like cutting edge stuff for me. I'd never seen anything like it. This was before, you know, everybody had a camera in their pocket. It was before um like, hey, what's up, Dusty? Glad you're tuning in, man. Another one of my lifelong friends, you know, 20, 30 years. Um, Dusty also has a YouTube channel. He reviews and goes over tabletop gaming, both RPGs and now he's getting into board games. So he does a lot of cool things with that. He talks about maybe some less known systems and games, and he gives you some budget friendly ideas for accessories and whatnot, and it's super family friendly. So if you know you're interested in that stuff, or if you have children, I highly recommend you go check out Dusty and Dice. Great channel. I look forward to the videos he posts every week. Um, but yeah, so yeah, no problem, man. Um, Let me get a beer and recollect myself. So I'm not really sure where I left off in my ramblings, but watching Jackass, uh, fear of the Lord and my dad in my soul, and I couldn't get enough. And me and Nate we were just like rabid with our appetite for this stuff. At the time when we found out about how amazing this type of filming was, I don't think we ever intended to actually make our own group. Maybe we did. But shortly into the 2003 year, we found ourselves sitting outside of a Target on the curb waiting for Nathan's mom to finish up whatever she was doing, shopping in Target. And we just started talking like, well, what would it take to make a group like this? The insane thing was I had no idea. Like I'm a little weirdo, and I thought, it felt normal to me, but Nathan being a pastor's kid and whatnot, I never would have thought this would have happened, but I'm so glad that it did. We were sitting there talking about what would it take for us to do something like this, and we of course, we had no idea what all it would take, but our big thing was we needed a camera and we needed a name. We figured everything else would just kind of come from there. So at the time, my uncle had a handy cam, and I don't know why I thought this, but I was convinced that he would let us borrow it, and it turns out he did. Uh, so I said, "Yeah, we got the camera, man. We got my uncle's camera until I can save up and buy my own for the group." And so now we need a name, and we were just like racking our brains for something cool to come up with. And then Nathan kind of flippantly was like, "Well, let's just call it what it is: two idiots with a camera." And we laughed it off, and it's kind of a funny name, but there was like silence afterwards because we had no idea what we would call this thing, and I think at the same time it kind of clicked, and we dropped the number, and we mulled over idiots with a camera, and when you say it, even when you hear it, it's the perfect name. Uh, Idiots with a Camera, IWAC. And I know I'm a little biased, but I would put it up against any name that's ever come out there, to include Jackass. Jackass is a household name, but Idiots with a Camera, IWAC was born uh, June 27th, 2003. And we had no idea what we were doing, which was beautiful. That's something that we would go on to call inexperienced balls. You just have no fear of consequence, good and bad. You don't really understand what's going on. You just hit record and you go. You don't know if you frame the shot right. You don't know if you like can hear what's going on. It didn't matter. We saw the red light on the camera and we just went for it. The first footage, the first type of stuff that we got was pretty terrible. It was super nostalgic for us and super meaningful for us. I think the very first clips we did, besides the intro, which on the camera you could put like text across the screen. So I scrawled IWAC across, and I think the very first intro was just a close up of Nate's hands playing the keyboard. He had made this little jingle for IWAC, and you hear my stupid voice, IWAC, idiots with a camera. And then I think the next, which I love that scene, by the way, it's one of the greatest intro jingles of all time. But I think our first thing, if Nate, if you're on here, you can chime in. I think it was binder destruction. We just like destroyed our school supplies. We were very rebellious. And it was just us making a mess of the backyard. But, those things are meaningful to me because we learned, maybe inadvertently so, we learned about, how to frame a scene a little bit. Like little by little, we were gaining this experience, and we really made a mess out of his parents' backyard. And then, of course, we cleaned it up. But at the time, I think we were about 15, so we didn't have a car. And we were like, we gotta go someplace where there's people, because the whole idea was to film people, like film stuff and get reactions. Uh, those would be more or less like what we would come to call skits. Stuff in like Nate's backyard with us just hurting ourselves. We would call stunts. But we walked to the local Walmart. Interestingly enough, I mean it's not the same place, but now Dusty and my dad both work at Walmart. Shout out to Walmart. But and the stuff we got there So unbeknownst to us at the time, I think building our niche, excuse me, within this genre. Um, there's a lot. Oh shit, Dusty's on the clock right now. Perfect. Um, so we within the realm of stupidity, there's a lot of different types of filming. Steve-O, one of the greats, he is more known for what I would call hardcore or like shock value. Like he's the type of guy who's gonna hammer his balls to his leg. You never have to worry about that with Idiovision or any project that I'm in. I will never do that. You'll never see any parts outside of my ass. You'll probably see that, but yeah, nothing else. Um, and so for us, we had more of an eclectic artistic feel, I dare say. Like some of the first footage that we got was I jumped in a shopping cart, hit record, Nate pushed me around Walmart. I mean, there's no real hilarity factor in that, but it it just has a special touch when you put a little bit of it in a video. And there were some other things that we did, pulled some stuff out of the shelves, jumped into them, stuff like that. But it was a really magical time and a really powerful feeling just having a camera with you. I think that's lost on people nowadays because everybody has a cell phone which has like a cinema level, uh, like quality wise, camera attached to it. And we were probably some of the only people walking around with a camera. It's really interesting. In one of the episodes, I think maybe our first episode that we filmed, which these episodes had no rhyme or reason, no structure or anything. We just filmed until we felt it was done, and we went on to the next one. We had no editing software. It was just record, stop, and here we go. Um, but we have like archival footage of, since I said, we grew up in a really small town, um, of a fixture of the community being taken from us. The local bowling alley caught on fire, and I'd be hard pressed to say that even the local news had footage of that. But we just happened to be in the area with a camera, and we started recording. Um, of I actually just watched that footage not too long ago, and our commentary is abysmal. But it was all, I think, the beauty of that first stuff that we got was all just part of learning and building. And there's a lot of good stuff in there, but we tried to get reactions a lot and whatnot. So like, we'd be walking through the streets of our town, and we'd see somebody, and I'd be like, "Oh, Nate, record me. I'm gonna go hump this tree and scream." And like, yeah, it's as ridiculous as it sounds. I'd run over there and hump a tree or whatever, and it was just funny to us to get people's reactions. Like we were filming this stuff and getting it on camera. Like I said, this was before social media. This was before you see all sorts of fails, and before you're like oversaturated with all of this. And it felt like the Wild West to us. I mean, we didn't have, the internet was kind of in its infancy. YouTube, I don't think at the time was owned by Google. It was mainly cat videos. So there was no way to like, how do you make stupid videos? Like you just had to go do it, and that's what we were learning. And especially, it was kind of really wild considering that two little Protestant boys, one a preacher's kid, like I mentioned, had just decided this was their path at the time, and I for one am glad that we did. But we would continue, uh, making videos for that first episode, just walking around trying to get like knee-jerk reactions. I want to say, I'm not sure, but um, one of our more famous bits, and by famous I mean the whole 12 people who's ever seen it, uh, was the laundry basketing. And I want to say that was born in episode one, definitely episode two. Um, but so we like a lot of our roots and fundamental things came from that episode, and it holds a special place in my heart. And not maybe not for quality of filming, but just for building the roots, the ladder that got us there. When we continued into episode 2, that's when I got my driver's license. So, you know, it wasn't just our little town that was available to us. We were able to expand into neighboring areas, and I think that's when we kind of got a little bit more brazen. We would get removed from locations. Um, I remember one of our big to us one of our big things was we got kicked out of the one of the malls up there because I was laundry basketing down the stairs and that crashing into garbage cans and unsuspecting onlookers. But just wild good times, kids being kids and really forming a strong foundation to what we would eventually aspire to. Um, and you'd be really surprised the people who are willing to do these things. Like I said, I was very surprised that Nate decided to do this. We were, you know, pretty nerdy. Needless to say, we were not exactly popular kids. Into gaming, and at the time that was like super taboo. Like you were a loser if you gamed. I got into skateboarding, and that was also in where I grew up. That was not a very popular activity at the time. You were looked down upon, kind of like you were scum. But you know, we eventually wanted to expand, and we were like, well, I don't know who's going to do this. So we just reached out to our other dumb friends, and the third member and one of the most pivotal members of our group was a dedicated cameraman. Um, his name is Eric. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to put him on the spot, but Eric really opened up IWAC for us. We were able to finally be on screen at the same time. Now, granted, we could prop the camera on a tripod or, a ledge or something, but one of the things that we would come to learn about IWAC and the beauty of IWAC is the cameraman was another personality in the videos. A lot of times you watch videos and the cameraman is supposed to just do that, shoot the video, just be the cameraman. But we never even really considered it. But when you're reviewing the footage, we're like, oh, it was awesome what Nate said when he was running the camera, and just hearing the giggling and like the input from whoever was running the machine. And it got to a point where you could kind of tell who was running the camera based on the personality behind it. I mean, obviously you could tell the voice, but even in the way that the footage was captured, it really took on a life of its own. And it was always one camera, idiots with a camera. So um, it was cool having somebody dedicated to that. And Eric he really shined as far as his camera work goes. He, just like us with doing the stupid things, it took him a while to really grasp what he was doing. But once he did, he was amazing. It truly was. And then me and Nate were ecstatic to be able to be on screen at the same time. And like I was mentioning, you never know who you're gonna get, but you'd be surprised at what your friends are willing to do. Um, you know, I recently went back to my hometown for uh, to catch up with people, see my family, but also because the IWAC anniversary, as we call it, was happening, and so I wanted to get the crew together and have like a watch party of some of our footage. And of course there was cameras, so you it just one thing leads into another. And on my channel I have a video I call Waterloo Trippin', and that's just some of the stuff that we did. Just got together and filmed. And it's amazing how many people uh will jump in front of a camera. Not just to like make, silly faces or whatever, but to actually do very bizarre things. Um, and it was awesome. I love that video, and I'm gonna shamelessly plug it right now. If you haven't checked it out, check out Waterloo Trippin'. It's on my channel. It's it's very near and dear to me. You're not going to see anything super extreme, but you're going to see a bunch of friends having a good time being dumb. And I think you can get a laugh out of it. We next reached out to, shoot. After that, I think there was about four more people that we pulled into the group. Just various friends that I had encountered. We had this weird hiatus period. I can get more like into some of these things later on, but in other episodes, like I said, if I'm not booed off the internet. But there was a time when one of the members was one of my skateboarding friends. He and I and a bunch of those characters kind of started our own little thing called the Pepperoni Gang, and we filmed quite a bit of stuff, but I felt convicted about it because I didn't really appreciate the footage that we got. It was very Bam-esque at the time. Viva La Bam was taking the world by storm, and anybody who was a punk skater was influenced by Bam. I think that Bam had just as much, if not more, um, influence on skate culture than Tony Hawk. He really shaped a generation in a very monumentous way. And those guys were super into it. I was more attached to the IWAC style of stuff. So I think I deleted all that footage, which I'm just remiss about that. Like I can't believe I did. Like deleting footage is so sacrilege to me now. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But out of the next four members, two of them stuck around. Brandon Stone and Zach DeSanto. Eric eventually took his leave, and that would become the core four of what IWAC was. Me, Nate Eveland, Brandon Stone, and Zach DeSanto. Um, and every time we were together, it was magic. We had camaraderie. We had just a never-ending well of ideas. You think like, how do you come up with this stuff? We had no idea. I mean, we still really don't. You just kind of shoot from the hip. I think though that when you get together with a purpose in mind, you can create magic. And I think that part of the human condition is the ability to laugh at someone. It's one of the reasons, well, in a specific way. It's one of the reasons why I love Adam Sandler movies. I feel like he's just part of my friend group, and the hilarity that ensues, albeit a lot of it is very over the top. It's just stuff that I experience with my own buds, and I love that stuff, and it's stuff that everybody's experienced with their dumb friends, you know. Um, it's a magical, primal, connecting thing where you can just genuinely laugh at somebody. If you trip and fall and hurt, or even just like stub your toe, and you see somebody do it, you laugh at it, not because you're belittling that person, but because you understand it. And I think there's a purity in that, and that's the goal, right? That's the mission statement. That's the driving force. Not to say that like spending time with your friends and connecting isn't, but when you show it to people and they can genuinely smile and laugh with you at your pain and at your discomfort, that's the payoff, man. And that's the connecting thing. And I think that is a major thread of humanity. Just being able to laugh at this thing called life that we are all going through. Um, and I think that's a big driving factor as to why I continue to do this stuff today. Um, but at the time, we we really wanted to broaden our audience. So we considered at one point getting on public broadcasting. We had no idea what we were doing. We were going to contact the people who ran the local network and just see if we could get a show. Of course, we were way under equipped for that. It would have been funny for us to try it, but you know, fast forward to now, and I know a little bit more about what it takes to do that. That would have been that would have been funny to see us bumble our way through it. I mean, we probably could have got through it, but who knows? Like I mentioned earlier, YouTube was in its what it was just coming around. The internet was in its infancy, and um, our goal was to start a YouTube show. We figured that would be like the best bridge to gap the actual network, syndicated television um, production. So we were kind of gearing up for that, and then you know life happened, and I moved away. Um, and if we fast forward all the way to around now, um, we're back kind of doing the same thing. We've all gone in different directions, but we've all sort of stayed connected. And it's just an this type of filming, this type of footage is just an itch that I just can't seem to scratch enough. So that's why you have Idiovision now. Or we have Idiovision. We had to, say goodbye to IWAC. It was, different time, different place, but that was our foundation. That was our building blocks. And from the years 2003 to 2008, um, IWAC was my life, and it will always have a special place in my heart. Um, but we can continue the feeling into the now and the future, and that's what we're doing. Um, with Idiovision. Me and Zach and some others are working on, uh, you know, putting together a production now that we have better means, that we have better technology, and being an adult, you have a little bit more resources to pull from. So we're hoping within the next few months to have something fresh and something new, and that stays true to the past, but also ushers us into what the future holds. Um, I briefly touched on the why. Why would somebody put themselves through this? Um, like I said, there's a primal thread that connects us all with laughter and being able to laugh at the the mistakes that people make. Um, but there's also a feeling that you get when you're in front of the camera and somebody's hit record, and your buddies are there, and it's I imagine it's like, when Michael Jordan touches a basketball, or Tony Hawk or Bam puts a skateboard under their foot. You feel alive and you feel connected to something, and you can't really explain the specifics of why you do these heinous stunts or whatever you want to call them. Um, but it just feels right. And I think people can relate to that. There's something that everybody does or that everybody's about. There's a passion that people have. And filming this type of content is that for me. It just always has felt right. And even if nobody else sees it, if it's just something that I watch myself, or share with my friends or just people around me, that's sufficient, you know. Me starting this YouTube channel has kind of been I guess, coming full circle with where we were at uh, back in 2008, almost 20 years ago. So it has been, a lot has changed since then, as far as technology and, like I said, familial obligations, but um, like it's coming full circle, and I'm really glad to have it now, even if it just ends up being my buddies seeing this, and family, and some other friends, some other people I know. But it feels like one of those things that if you don't do it, you're gonna regret it. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to have the what ifs. I don't want to have the how comes. So, I'm hoping I'm hoping at least a few of you can get some entertainment out of it, because it's very fun for me to do these things, and I know it's fun for whoever else is involved. I forgot about some of our influences that I wanted to talk about. At the time when we were coming up, late 90s into the well, I think it'd be more early 2000s, also like 2005, 2006 maybe. Um, there was this thing called the homegrown scene, and that was where a bunch of groups like the one that we created, they came into a sort of prominence. Like I said, Nathan and I were rabid at trying to consume content, and you had Jackass, you had CKY. There was also another group from the UK, orchestrated by a man called Dom Jolly. It was called Trigger Happy TV, and I would classify it in the same vein as like the Jackass type stuff, but it wasn't stunt based. It was more what we would call skit based, and that was an incredibly heavy influence on IWAC, our group, and specifically Nathan. Dom Jolly would do things like the camera would be zoomed in on a store, and you would see people going in and out of it, and there would be a sign, and it would say "Cat burglar stalks town." And then slowly the camera would pull back, and you'd see an alleyway next to the store, and somebody would emerge from the alleyway in like a giant cat outfit with a black mask, holding a white bag with a dollar sign scrawled on it, and he'd be peering around the corner. And then it would just go to the next bit, and that stuff was so hilarious. Um, just the tongue-in-cheek humor of it all. I remember one where he dressed up as a snail, and he walked at a normal pace up to a crosswalk, and when it was time for him to cross, he laid down on his belly and just inched his way to the other side, like to the point where he didn't make it in one light, and he just he blocked these cars. Now I do take issue with blocking people from trying to get to work and whatnot, but it was a funny bit, and then when he got to the other side, he just stood up and walked normal, and stuff like that. That's what Trigger Happy TV was all about. It wasn't about launching off of a rocket or anything like that. It was more like theatrical, super funny and super impactful on IWAC. And then there were groups in the homegrown scene that were equally as impactful. I would say that CKY is the godfather of homegrown, but they eventually, made it big, and it's half a Jackass. So, um, but there were others. Pickled Eggs was one. That was an Australian group. Those guys were super gnarly. They did some real wild stuff, and they had a huge impact on us. That was, I think, Nate's favorite homegrown group. There was No Mercy Videos. They were more of a kind of a hardcore, like borderline backyard wrestlers. They did some wild stuff. They actually have this legendary and controversial video where two of them, one guy like suplexes another guy off of a roof through a table. Um, there's probably equal people on both sides of the is that real or fake argument. This was years before AI. That was a gnarly video. And then my favorite group was a group, I believe they were from Canada. I think No Mercy was a US based group. But um, the Canadian group, Rebels of Egypt, those guys were probably the closest to what we were, but they just had real, I guess, I want to say production value, but they just had their stuff together. This was before social media. I think MySpace might have been out and Facebook was just starting, but you had to like actively go to people's websites on the internet. I know, it's just crazy, right? Uh, and their site was really rad. They had it all set up, and videos at the time were not like, an hour live stream. It was, 3 minutes or whatever. A lot of people were still dealing with dial-up. So, one thing you can do if you're interested in any of these is you can search the Wayback Machine. It's this archive of old internet sites, and they still have them in more or less their entirety. And so you can see some of these things: Rebels of Egypt, Pickled Eggs. I'm not sure about No Mercy, but there was also this thing, this group. I think it was, I can't remember what Nate said it was called, YKH Videos or something like that. And they created what they called the Hunt. And I believe there were 4 cycles of this before they stopped. And the Hunt really united the homegrown scene. This group or this guy created this task list of ridiculous things that you could do. I don't know, smash a light bulb over your head, or jump into a pile of razor wire or something like that. Like, and the idea was you would film your group doing this, and then you would send it in, and you would allocate them like points, like smash a light bulb over your head, 10 points, jump into razor wire, 50 points, get a girl to flash the camera and say the name of your group, 30 points. And at the end of the hunt, whoever had the highest would be crowned champion, and the dude would give out, prizes or whatever, like maybe the Pickled Eggs DVD or the CKY box set or something like that. And that really united the scene at the time. And believe it or not, there were many, many groups from all over the world, that I think it was from all over the world anyways, that participated in this. And you didn't just like, oh, I have to take your word for it. You watched all the videos. So that was like a hub of homegrown madness. And I remember just at school getting in trouble for, I think we got in trouble for it because, it wasn't, scholarly activity. But at least at Nate's house and on the computers we had when we could at school, we would just consume this content. And it was, like I said, it was super gnarly. Really fascinating times. And we, of course, really wanted to be a part of it. But with our limited capabilities and not really understanding how to upload videos, we never got to do that. But we actually created our own hunt, that we could do in school or wherever. And it was like run full speed and crash into a vending machine, jump into the garbage cans at lunch, just fall into a classroom. So we took inspiration from so many different things. Uh, Man, I mentioned unlocking memories, and they're kind of flooding back in right now. Um, but those were great days, and I would love for the homegrown scene to come back. That's one of I guess, tertiary intentions of mine for filming new stuff. We have very raw capabilities, and I like that. I like that look. I like that style. Uh, you can get a good idea of what I'm talking about if you watch that video I mentioned, Waterloo Trippin'. Um, I appreciate social media, but I don't really like cell phone footage. I don't like cell phone cameras. They're amazing, but it just takes something out of it. And one thing that, you'll never see us do is devolve into prank videos. To me, that's something very different than this type of stuff. Sure, in Jackass they prank each other, and that's like borderline. I mean, they created the genre, so they can kind of define it as we go along. But as far as I'm concerned, like, pranks outside of your group are just detestable things. I have a severe distaste for pranks. Um, so you won't see that either. But I am encouraged that social media. I consider YouTube a social media, so of course I'll be posting on that. Like I said, full circle, coming to terms with new stuff and where we're at. But I think the future is bright. We've kicked around the idea of having a Kickstarter to fund a future project, like a future project. We've actually been in contact with some people that the Jackass crew has worked with to see if maybe we could do some filming with them, involving bulls and stuff. But we just have to get a better budget together, and so that's why we're considering maybe reaching out. But I don't know. We'll see. The future is bright, and we're optimistic. We are getting there in age. All of us are approaching 40. Um, so you don't bounce as much. So we have to consider that. Um, oh, no worries, Zach. That's my buddy Zach. He's part of the Core 4 of the IWAC crew, and he's the one I mentioned who would be continuing forward with the stupidity projects. Zach is arguably the better half of Idiovision, and we're like I said, we've got some projects in store. Um, but yeah, you don't bounce back as much, and also something that Bam said. The same thing that was funny when you were 15 might not be as funny when you're 40. He also said that when you're 15 and you do something, people just look at it like, oh, you're a kid. If you see a 40-year-old man do the same thing, they might want to lock you up in a facility. So those are waters that we have to navigate. But I think we have yeah, the Fantastic Four. I think we have quite a team, and by team, yeah, it's basically me and Zach, that can put together something that hopefully people will get enjoyment out of. Um, yeah, I think that pretty much covers the origins. If there are any questions, you can always leave comments on the video. I'll post it, once I figure out how to do this streaming thing. Um, I'll post the video on my channel, so you could, if you feel inclined to, you could go back and listen to it. But I'm hoping, like I said, at least I think I said, to make this a semi-regular thing, an idiot and his thoughts. At some point, I'd love to have Zach on, or even Nate, um, to as like a guest on this whatever it is. I don't want to call it a podcast, but you know, um, what foods can go into an air fryer? Is this a communal air fryer, or is this an air fryer at your house? Because I would think if this is something at your house, I mean, anything? Question mark. But if it's in the break room, I would avoid fish, any seafood. Yeah, that's kind of taboo. Yeah. Answers are always shellfish. Yeah, fish is just. Mm. You ever had somebody like microwave like leftover seafood at work? That's nobody wants to smell that. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping to on a semi-regular schedule. I don't know. That's probably a detriment to growth, but I don't think it'll be as regular as my Wednesday night uh, podcast with my friend John. But whenever I get some time, I plan to do more of these, to tell you guys more about what's in the works. Like I said, maybe have a couple of the guys come on and we can reminisce. Excuse me. I would love to share footage with you, but that's we'll see what happens there. And maybe just have some cool commentary from the others who grew up in this, and Yeah, I think that'd be great. So you know, if that's something you're interested in, let me know. If not, I guess I'm gonna keep doing it anyways. But yeah, I think that's about all I had for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in and spending time with me. Time is really important, and you know, having you here and interacting, that was amazing. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad that there's interest in this. And until I get booed off, like I said, we'll keep it going. So thanks a lot. Enjoy your night. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'm wishing you all a great week ahead. And sweet, Dusty. Thank you. I'm glad that you got a lot out of it, man. Uh, I really appreciate the support. So yeah, like I said, have a great week, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers. Or, as the Irish say, sláinte.